Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
Yes, this is yet another episode being conducted using Zoom, but we hope to get back to our studio and recommence live broadcasting very soon. Now then, this evening our guest, who's agreed to join us by Zoom, is a interesting character, shall we say, with a very promising political career ahead of him. And that probably is why sometimes he's being held back. But here we are, the former head of the council there in Weligama, and none other than, of course, member of the SJB, needless to say, Mr. Rehan Jayawickreme. Very good evening to you, Mr. Jayawickreme.
Very good evening for us.
And first of all, we'd like to ask you, with the likely, well, the airports have now been opened. We've saying that 2 jabs and you're in, and so obviously I suppose the country is expecting a normalcy to in terms of tourism. How about your area? It's a hotbed of tourism, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and we already have a large influx of tourists already coming in. Some of the hotels which were not even at 5% capacity is now nearing 20 to 30%, which is a good sign. But what worries me is the ad hoc method that the government has used in filtering these tourists. So that's what the concern is. So what most of the hoteliers are concerned about for us is that there may be a spike in tourism and then again another extended lockdown once the numbers start rising.
What would you prefer? Would you prefer something else? How do you foresee how the government ought to be handling it then?
Now think of it this way for us. On the 23rd of September, there was a $5 million investment by a private company called Pospinom. They went into a 2-year agreement with the Aviation Authority of Sri Lanka. They invested $5 million on this, which is close to $1 billion rupees. With the promise that the government plans to conduct PCR tests on foreigners coming into the country. Now, on the 27th, this is not a normal investment, a $5 million investment. The AASL then suspends it, saying that there is a technical issue. Now, again, on the 1st of October, the Sri Lankan health authorities relaxes the rules and exempts fully vaccinated passengers from doing PCRs at the airport. Now, my question is for us. It's not about, now it's obviously, I'm not talking about the gross financial mismanagement of this $5 million in a time where gas prices and all are increasing. But now this was in my mood, in my idea, it was a good, in my head, it was a good idea. Purely because of the fact that even though this is a $5 million investment, the citizens of this country and tourists would have been safe. So now, like I told you on Talk of the Town, now what happens is, okay, if a tourist who is coming in gives a report 72 hours prior to boarding saying that that person is negative, they are allowed to fly. But what I'm trying to understand is, what if this person contracts COVID on the way from a taxi to the airport, at the respective airport the person tries to come in from, in the airline in which the person is coming from, and what if that person gets COVID at the Sri Lankan airport after coming in? Then this person is going to go all over Sri Lanka spreading the virus. And the once great job that we did with testing, tracing and isolating is all going to go to the dogs. So that's my question. So why is it that we cannot do a PCR on arrival? And why can't we then put them in a quarantine center of their liking for a period of 3 days and then redo the PCR so that they can come out after that? So I don't understand why such a simple method is not being used, beyond me. And I think it's beyond a lot of Sri Lankans as well. So
are you suggesting then perhaps that this is not connected to government officials?
Definitely, 100%, because it's pretty obvious why such a facility was being put up in the first place. And the fact that the airport aviation services went into an agreement with something that should have gone through the medical profession is also, the medical authorities is also something that's beyond me. As in, even if it's a PCR testing facility, it has to adhere to health guidelines. So what I don't understand is, why was it that the health authorities and the aviation and this private company, they could have all got into this together as one team? And how it was magically commissioned on the 23rd. And I have never I don't know why, in the middle of a corona pandemic, they even had a soft opening for this facility. They went and cut a ribbon, Sri Lankan style. But it's beyond me how $5 million was invested. This place was open on the 23rd, closed on the 27th. And then on the first day, they say that they have relaxed the rules. So if they knew that, then why did they spend $5 million and commission this thing in the first place? Because which tourist in their right mind for us would come and willfully take a PCR test, knowing the fact that it could be positive and they could be sent to quarantine? So that itself shows that there is some hanky-panky going on here.
Right. Let's talk of this pent-up demand to visit this wonderful island nation. I've spoken to hotel owners in the Negombo area, and they all tell me that they are getting advance bookings. Is that the same in your area?
Absolutely. Not just advance bookings, but lots of tourists are coming here for us. We have to accept that really, not because of the extraordinary job that the SLTD has done, but because of these backpackers videos and so on. And most of the hotels, I have to admit, are getting full up now with bookings.
So that's good. That's good news. I was in the Unawatuna area recently, and I couldn't help but notice that people were being rather proactive. Some people were repairing, painting. They were doing bits and pieces. They were not just shuttered up and lounging at home. They were doing some work.
And I was in Unawatuna yesterday as well. I was at a tourist establishment, and there were lots of tourists present. People who had to shut down their businesses were restructuring their businesses. They were doing carpentry work, much like what you saw. So all this is fine and well for us. But my issue is that after getting all these tourists into the country and making them stay here for about a month or two, and then then not getting them down with due process, and then endangering the lives of not only the tourists but also the local hoteliers. But my fear is that if countries like Britain, for example, enforce further restrictions, how are these tourists going to go back to their own countries? They are going to have a really, really hard time getting back into their own countries, and they are going to be spending much more than they originally planned, and that is also going to affect tourism to a certain level.
Right. And what about is it from a tourist point of view, is it safe now to travel in Sri Lanka, especially in Weligama and so on? Is it safe?
First up, for us, the health authorities are doing a fantastic job. But then again, they are also complaining now that because of the government's ad hoc methods of getting the tourists in, that their workload is getting too much for them to handle. So that happened during the April outbreak as well, where our health services were severely burdened. So my worry is that it's not the tourists actually coming in like what I said, but it's about the safety of the tourists and the locals. It's the main concern that we have, and the concern that the hoteliers have as well.
And what more would you like the government to be doing for your industry?
Number one, to begin with, I don't think that they have done anything at all for this industry. Let me get that clear. The second thing is, it's beyond me how, I fail to understand why that's possible, judging by the fact that the wife of someone who is predominantly into tourism, even though it may be called conflict of interest, but she is well versed in what she does. And what I don't understand is why they are not taking a proactive approach to help these institutes. I'll give you a good example for us. If you can just give me a minute.
Please.
The restaurant owners in Colombo were suffering without opening businesses. They were asked not to open their businesses. The people in the south were asked not to open their businesses. But at the same time, places like Arugambe were having parties of 300, 400, 500 tourists at a party. And all their establishments were open. So what I'm saying is, it doesn't matter to me if Arugambe has all these parties, because at the end of the day, I want tourism to flourish. But if the government is not applying the rule of law equally to all these places, what's the point in business, and what's the point in fair play as well? When places in Arugambaya are allowed to open, why is it that the South can't open? Why is it that Colombo restaurants were made to suffer? The government could have easily told the Colombo restaurants that, put a regulation where you all only serve people with double. I find it very difficult to comprehend how the SLTDA can be so stupid in implementing their decisions.
Well, but are you surprised? Because when we look at the wider picture, there are various departures of due process, and the legal system seems to be stuck in an abyss of virtual despair, and so on. So are you surprised that this same sort of happening is happening in your industry, in the industry that your town is known for?
I'm really not surprised, but I expected this government to implement, because the people of this country voted for a just and fair and disciplined society. So I'm not surprised. Right now, I'm not surprised. But when they started doing all these things and when they started making all these ad hoc decisions, it was deeply disturbing for us. Because do you remember when the Russian tourists came to Sri Lanka, and when Udayanga Veeratunga promised some sort of bio bubble? You do remember that the Mirissa boats,
yes,
these people on whale watching tours, and then no sooner the tourists got out, the whale watching the tour operators were sent on 14-day quarantine.
yes.
So now it has just come to a level where now the people are even afraid to sometimes open their business, because they are saying, okay, so what if we do get a spike in tourists, and what's going to happen if the country is going to be in lockdown for another 4 or 5 months because of the government's ad hoc decisions?
So that remains a concern to you?
Yes, and not just to me, but to all hoteliers, for us.
And now we may have to discuss this after the break, which is coming up shortly. But let me put out the question. Basil Rajapaksa has announced that they are hoping to have elections early next year, provincial elections. We'll get into the nitty-gritties of that. But ahead of the break, why don't you tell me how well the SJB have prepared for the provincial elections that are forthcoming?
I have actually started my campaign. Today was the first day that I started my campaign, and it's because of this interview that I couldn't visit about 10-20 houses more, but then I started my campaign today. So just like that, all the SJB electoral organizers have been advised by its leader, Sajid Premadasa, to immediately get ready for any form of election, and even if there are no elections held, for us to start visiting houses. So the SJB has just started that. I have started that today, and I think all electoral organizers around the country will follow suit.
Right, and on that note, let's take a quick peek at this evening's headlines from the Newsfirst Primetime News team, and we will see you on the other side of the break.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And welcome back to Newsline Zoom. I'm in conversation with a man from Weligama, Mr. Rehan Jayawickreme, who of course I suppose will be making a play in the forthcoming provincial elections. Rehan, tell me, are we likely to have provincial council elections anytime soon?
Mr. Basil Rajapaksa has promised provincial council elections to be held before April. He has promised this at the party representatives meeting, where even the SJB representative, Honorable Patum Bandara, was present. The Attorney General had given a directive saying that because of the confusion caused by the previous government, that provincial council elections cannot be held under the new system or the old system. So there has to be a brand new bill that needs to be passed in Parliament, and I think Mr. Basil Rajapaksa has promised it to be done in the month of January.
I see. And what is the I know that you'll have to say that it's very good and very positive and very green or very rosy for you, for your party, but tell me honestly, your ears on the ground, what are people saying to you?
People are thoroughly disappointed with this government.
Why?
To the level.
Why?
To the level because they've been hoodwinked from a wide range of issues, starting from their promise to conserve or protect the environment, which they have failed visibly in doing so, from their promises of appointing, how would I say, Viyatmaga sort of people into their cabinet, which they have not done so. They only have about 2 or 3 Vietnamese people in it. Then also they had a lot of belief that the president will somewhat instill a fair and just society, which we are not seeing right now. They also promised to reduce the cost of living, which I think for the first time in Sri Lanka's history, there was a price increase of 1,200 something for gas cylinder. So I really don't know how people are going to use gas anymore. And they have to start sticking to firewood. So the people feel let down, and they feel massively let down. And it's very difficult to find someone who will admit to voting, who would have voted for the last government. They all say that they didn't vote.
But firewood sellers will welcome the move.
Yes, they will. That's firewood sellers. Yeah, they would. I think they would welcome the move. But then what about the little hotel owners for us that have to run on gas cylinders to cook for 10, 15 people? They are going to suffer. Then what about?
But when did government care about the people?
So good question.
They didn't.
That's a very good. Of course they did.
Item 2 of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's manifesto refers to the infamous bond scam, right? Which your erstwhile leader was the leader at the time. We haven't seen any. We have a date, but the central bank surely has enough regulations. I know you're not the governor of the central bank. I'll save this question for him, but I'll make the statement anyway. The central bank has enough internal regulations to confiscate the $12 billion bonds that are still blocked and being held by the central bank. Under the terms, there's plenty of rules for them to cancel that license, take that money and return it to the EPF. But such a simple exercise is failing themselves too, and I'm sure that Mr. Niwad Cabral will be on the spot, and when we do interview him, we will be asking him that question. So there you go.
Faraz, can I ask you one counter question, if you don't mind? Have you ever heard of thieves? Have you ever heard of thieves catching thieves?
Well, there is honor amongst thieves too.
Yes, there is, and that is what's going on now. I have never in my life seen a thief running and catching another thief, and that is what's happening now. How can they catch the thieves of the bond scam when the scams that they are doing now are much bigger? Now we have the garlic scam, we have the sugar scam, we have all sorts of scams in place. So will they really go and catch people who are thieving? Of course they won't. This is what you call deal politics. The deal politics of the then UMP and the now government is now coming into light day by day for everyone to see.
Can I talk about a little, because elections are coming up and so on, and you'll be part of that process, won't you?
Yes, I will. I've already decided to contest for the provincial council elections representing Market.
And what about the influence? Are you going to sorely miss Mangala Samaravira?
I miss him every day, every minute, every second, Farhan. I miss him very dearly, and this is the first time someone has asked me this question on TV, and yes, I very much do miss him. I miss his guidance, I miss his wisdom, and I miss Mangala, just being Mangala.
It's a bit like we always miss our late chairman.
I think your chairman was also one of my mentors. He was one of the mentors that I had. I only had 2 in my life. One was Kili Maharaja, and the second was Mangala Samaravira, and I miss them both very dearly, and I hope that they are both having a shot of cognac in heaven and resting in power and watching all the drama unfold and smiling and crying and laughing.
I feel sorry for God, because there might be a bit of concern up there, and God might be being unseated by these. But anyway, I want to ask you, at the 72nd anniversary of the Sri Lanka Army, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa said that steps will be taken to amend the constitution and introduce a new electoral system as promised to the people. What do you think this means? Are we going to have a president for life? Is that one of the things that's being planned?
The first thing that they should have done when opening that was add Tamil on that name board, which is not there. So let me just tell you that first. The function that he went for had a name placard, and it didn't have Tamil included. So I urged the army commander to add Tamil onto it. And the second thing is, I hope I'm not going to publicly humiliate the president for us. As you know, that's not my style. the man said things that he wants to implement in the future. And I wish him all the best. And I hope that if he is introducing a good constitution, that he will introduce a constitution that will do right by its people and not go into something like what happened during Saddam Hussein's era in Iraq.
In the meantime, whilst the president is talking about an amendment to the constitution and introduction of a new electoral system, in the meantime, the cost of gas, cement, flour, milk, tea, rice packet and kottu increased today. Now, where is the balance?
How can there be a balance for us? Other than all the things you mentioned, a kilo of cardamom is now 37,000 rupees the last time I checked. We are heading into a bigger crisis, I think, than what even Zimbabwe faced. So I really don't know. And the Consumer Affairs Authority Chairman, former director, executive says that there's a white pen following him around. I mean, these are all horrific things to hear about for us. These are all horrific things, and it's not, I mean, it's easy for us to smile, but then how are the poor people in this country going to survive? It is going to be a battle to survive.
But do you think, Rehan, Jayawickreme, that the Republic, the people out there, will actually receive this message of what's going on? Do the forgotten people in the rural areas and the not so rural areas, but the forgotten people, do they realize, do they appreciate what is going on? Are you at the SJB and the other opposing parties, are you all too busy just playing politics in Colombo, or are you all taking the message out there and instilling in the people's minds that, and explaining to them the ramifications of various moves and explaining that this is why the prices are high? Are you all doing that?
We have been instructed to do so for us, not just now, but since the time the SJB formed. And Sajid Premadasa is very, very vocal about us staying in our electorates, which is why even I, for example, live in Valigama now. I don't live in Colombo anymore, I live in Valigama. He has told us to either be in the electorate or to vacate our electorates and give it to people who actually live in this electorate. So these are all things that are not going out in mainstream media, but he has advised us what to do. And I have absolute faith for us that Sajid Premadasa will one day lead this country, and rest assured, it is not always about the leader, it is about the people that the leader surrounds himself with. And mark my word, he will surround himself with people that are doers and people that can get the job done.
Well, that's marvelous to hear. But you know that there are people not only in the rural areas and the not so rural areas who are forgotten. There are people who are being incarcerated and who they claim would claim that they are not being given a fair trial, or that in some cases they're not being given a trial full stop, right? So when you look at, I don't want to go into any names as such, because there are so many, right? But when you look at all this, these are the items that will be the driving force behind other countries considering travel advisories for travel to Sri Lanka or against travel to Sri Lanka. You, from the heartthrob of the tourism industry, surely you must be worried about that.
I'm deeply worried, not just about that for us, but because the visiting EU delegation had many concerns that they brought forward to the opposition leaders. And one of them was that we are very, 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 very close to losing the GSP. So all what I implore on this government, you all can continue any personal vendetta the way you all want. But if we lose something like the GSP plus, it's not only going to affect the garment industry, it is also going to affect the fishing industry. So we took great deals to get this back during the 2015 government. So I make a very sincere appeal to the government. All these personal vendettas, you all can continue if it's not going to harm the people of this country. But if you all continue doing this, we are going to lose some serious concessions coming our way, and all of you in the government have to be responsible if that happens.
Well, you know, it's been very interesting talking to you, of course, Rehan Jayawickreme. Thank you very much for taking time off away from the people. I hope that you do rush back to the people because the people need you more than ever before. and do explain to them the news so that they will understand the ramifications of what's going on.
Thank you so much, Faraz.
Thank you. Thank you, and that's the way it was on Newsline this evening. Do take care. Have a great night ahead of you, and as always, God bless you.
Newsfirst, Newsline with